Hi, welcome. This is our final panel of MRCon 2025. So this is either an occasion for great sorrow if you'll miss it or great joy if you can't wait to get it in your rearview mirror. We are happy to have you joining us. And today's panel is a celebration of the Miskatonic Repository community content itself. The lovely panelists who have joined me, who will be introducing themselves in a moment, will everybody will carry forward and present a couple of pieces of scenarios that are on the Miskatonic repository that we think best embody some of the cool and effective and interesting things that writers are doing there. So we'll walk through those. We'll talk about, kind of other scenarios or other ways that have done that really well. And then we'll move on. Should you have questions, please put them in the Twitch chat. XP Lovecat is collecting those and we'll make sure that we don't ignore them. We would love to have your thoughts, your questions as we go. So I will ask just briefly, everybody introduce yourselves and let people know, where they may have seen you, and then we'll get into the actual discussion. I'll start with Leslie, just going in the direction.
Okay, so I'm Leslie, otherwise known as XP Lovecat. You may see me around the internet on my YouTube channel where I talk about reviews, role-playing game systems, a few different systems, but mostly Call of Cthulhu, and I love talking about Miskatonic Repository scenarios.
Great. Newman?
Hello, I'm T.A. Newman. I'm the host of the Miskatonic Playhouse and recently appointed chair of the Council of Shoggoths, which are the organizing guys of this entire event, of which you have an absolute lineup here, and our Lord and Master Heinrich as well. I'm also a writer in the community, so I've written a few things within the Miskatonic repository. Yeah, you kind of find me everywhere, really. Yeah, just online, TA Newman, or at the Miskatonic Playhouse or repository.
Fantastic. And we are very, very honored to have Matt Sanderson with us today.
Oh, yes, I'm Matt Sanderson, freelance author, usually working with anything that revolves around the machinations of the great old ones. So anything that's got the word Cthulhu in the title, usually you'll find me there. But also one of the co-hosts on the Good Friends of Jackson Elias podcast. You may have seen me on a couple of actual plays on a few different platforms, either with Into the Darkness or RPG Reanimators. Yeah, I get around a little bit.
Excellent. And Grand Shoggoth Emeritus Heinrich Moore.
Well, thank you, Evan. I am Heinrich Moore. I'm probably best known on Miskatonic Repository for Heinrich's guide to character creation and Heinrich's guide to Carcosa that I also had the pleasure of running at this convention. And yeah, this is my first year not organizing the convention. So you have Newman and the other Shoggoths to thank for how well everything has gone and what a great convention it has been. So cheers to that.
Great. And so let's start with you, Heinrich. You want to bring up your first example of something on the MR that really strikes you as noteworthy and praiseworthy.
Yeah. So when folks ask me about products on the Miskatonic repository, one of my standard go-tos is to say that the repository is a great place for creativity. I like to think, some of the authors that are really pushing what is possible with the medium and trying new things. And so I say, I can't promise you that all the scenarios on the repository are good. I can tell you that they're all interesting. And fortunately, the scenarios I have the pleasure to talk about are both good and interesting. And so I have picked a couple from the Miskatonic Repository bundle that is also available, and I encourage everyone to check out. It's a great savings. But I'll talk about Steve Anderson's Arkham Fire. The most noteworthy aspect, I think, the thing that gets you in the door with the scenario is that you get to play Arkham firefighters in contemporary times. And if you're going to do a one-shot, I think the ability to have pre-generated investigators or some kind of pre-existing group is such a powerful tool. And I love to see it used in this way to really drive the story. And the scenario right from the beginning encourages players to really get into the atmosphere and embrace the frankly absurdity of what it would be like to be a firefighter in Arkham, Massachusetts, in this Cthulhu mythos universe. And so players are encouraged, for example, to describe like a past incident, right, that they participated in, a past fire, a past issue, problem, what have you. And so I love this idea of using that as a framing device. And I can talk more about other aspects of the scenario, but like that is what you're going to see on the cover. That's what's on the tin, and I think it's just a great example of a scenario doing something different and promising everyone a really fun experience for one night.
Yeah, so I want to, I guess, if you have thoughts, other panelists, on scenarios that have really done a great job with framing or taking kind of an alternative way into the scenario. Firefighters, I don't even believe have an occupation listing in the book. So that's, kind of automatically a new approach to your way into the scenario. Any thoughts?
I didn't even think about that with it not being occupation in the book. I mean, you put it like that, it's almost like a no-brainer to like, let's try that out. Yeah, because it's just fun, it's different, but also it's a bit like Heinrich was saying, it's so different, but at the same time, it's so embedded within Arkham because they are Arkham firefighters, and I love that idea of them kind of going, tell us about a fire that you've already been involved in, an event you've already been involved in. Yeah,
yeah, I love the. I was putting it as a framing device, but I really love this idea of approaching the mythos from different directions and putting the spotlight on some of the characters that necessarily exist in the universe, but probably usually are in the background. And of course, Arkham has a fire department; it has to. But we never think about it. We never think of these municipal services, and so to put players in that role, I think genius.
Players are pretty much always the starters of the fire in Arkham. It's natural solution, isn't it? Burn the building down. So
well,
actually,
it's funny you should say that, and these are spoilers, so mute yourself if you don't want to hear spoilers. But it's sort of there is an aspect here of like you are following in the footsteps of Call of Cthulhu investigators and the trouble that they have caused. Which I think starting a scenario at the end of another scenario is just one of those great tricks to tell interesting stories.
Yeah, and this was it's funny, Heinrich, we shouted you out in the scenario workshop that we just had, when one of the pieces of advice that we offered to people who were considering their first scenario is, most people's first scenario is stop the cult before they XYZ. And what, Heinrich has often proposed is, what if you're too late? And that's how you begin. And you're starting the scenario just after the awful thing has happened. And now you've got to deal with the fallout from that. So this is fantastic. I think we'll see that kind of structure in more scenarios. It's worked out really well in some, if you're a comic book guy, right, what are they called? The demolition crew, cleanup crew, something like that. But there are stories out there of, these giant beings have fought each other and now you have to deal with what's left. Really cool, really good stuff. All right. Matt, what's something you'd like to highlight?
I was thinking, because there's such a wide variety of stuff that's out there, I tried to think of a common theme that would link my examples together. So I took an example out of Peterson's Abominations and the scenario in their Mohole, which when I played it, I'm a very big Doctor Who fan, especially the original Doctor Who, and Inferno is one of my favourite all-time stories. So when I recognised certain character names and recognised the setup, I went, hang on a minute, I know what's going to happen in this scenario now. But there are ones out there on the MR which do it a little bit more tongue-in-cheek or a little bit more obfuscated, that you don't necessarily know exactly where it's going to go. And the first one for me was Deliver Us from Evil, the one by Keeper Doc and Alex Galot. Hopefully I'm pronouncing his surname right. But yeah, that one I didn't know to start with, even though it's right there in front of you, that this is very much a homage to the film Deliverance. Right down to items that the characters are carrying with them. Even down to signature clothing items. I remember one player was going, "Why have I got a wetsuit?" Because you're Burt Reynolds, that's why. And there are various set pieces all the way through the scenario, and it's great. And it also has a wonderful use of one-time key abilities that you wouldn't necessarily get in the regular Call of Cthulhu rules, but they're abilities that help reinforce either tropes from that type of grindhouse movie, or to help to make sure that everyone is there to get to the final conclusion. And just everything works. It's a great schlocky fun time with oodles of violence that you can heap on your characters. I was going to say players, but that's not so advisable. Keep your players alive, boys and girls. Do bad things to your characters. But yeah, and also at the center of it, an original monster. So again, one thing you don't necessarily know exactly what's going to be coming up and biting you, or in my case, subjecting me to drowning when I played it.
Yeah, players love Easter eggs. So like specificity and very things that they can grab onto from the real world. I see that work really well in scenarios.
Oh yes.
And frankly, I love and have done this many times. One of my favorite, subgenres of Cthulhu scenario is, hey, I saw this really cool thing in a movie or a TV show, and I want to do something like that. Depending on if it's something everybody knows, there's usually a twist on it, so you're like,
Yeah.
it doesn't play out exactly how you'd expect. Or if it's a little more obscure, you're like, no, this is just our setting. This is where we're gonna go with it. And I love it because you can take the basic setup and then do something wildly new with it, but it's familiar that people kind of know the big level tropes, and so it's easy for them to get into the setting and the feel of it. You tell someone like Alex, sit down there, like, we've got, grindhouse movie, gritty, nasty thing from the 70s. You're like, yep, okay. You were to do something similar with the video nasties in the UK. You're like, yep, all right, this is going to be gross. We're ready to go. And it's a great thing to give the players just enough expectation and not enough so that they really know what's happening.
Yeah, and I think creatively, I think when we approach these scenarios, if we were writing fiction, there would sort of be the feeling that it might be derivative. But in the RPG space, it's not derivative, it's inspiring. It allows you to interact with this medium that you care so much about and really be part of the story and change the story, which is magnificent. But also, as you say, potentially take it in different directions while giving players enough out-of-game information to know kind of how to act in the scenario and what to imagine that they see, so that they can really like take on these roles. So yeah, magnificent. And I don't think you knew this. I was one of the editors on that scenario, and I think they did such a tremendous job just knocking it out of the park.
Great job. Yeah. Everybody say thank you to your editors. They're the real MVPs.
No. The authors. It was really great to get to have a look at that before everyone else did.
Yeah. That's the sneak peek is the main reason to do it. Newman, your turn.
I think the first one I'm going to talk about is it's because we've run it recently. We've got it coming out on the Playhouse soon. Is Cat Clay's The Resort. So The Resort, which is, I think the thing with this one that really kind of the element of it that made me just kind of go, oh my god, we're going to have so much fun with this. It was the investigators, and Cat has created a significantly beautiful little sandbox of this island where the resort is on the island, where, I mean, at one point we kind of nearly forgot we were playing Call of Cthulhu when we were just role playing these rather detestable investigators, because I think what Kat's done here is she's chosen investigators that aren't actually quite likable, and it really gave the table the opportunity to play something where I'm not a concerned citizen and I've heard something and I'm checking in it, or it's not my job as a police officer to come by and do this. So it was a very unique kind of, well, not unique, but a really lovely way to kind of give the investigators, or the players investigators, that could go to town. So, for example, one of them was like a super rich, like angel investor. So like, going and buying up companies kind of guy. Another one was, and these had all been selected, like pre-selected as these people to come to the island to experience the, whatever the island's got to offer, which I won't go into too many spoilers. And another one was like an extreme sports enthusiast. Another was a tech bro. So there's quite a lot of money, a lot of money in these characters, which indicated there was a lot of, should we say, in-game class commentary, which was played out rather than discussed. One was a lifestyle influencer, so kind of like a TikTok star. And one was a celebrity chef. And we just went to town. We just had so much fun doing it, to the point where a lot of those interrelationships within the investigators that then tied into the investigation was so crucial to how the game played out, about who was going to save who was absolutely not going to give a crap about someone else and save them, who was going to put somebody else in danger on purpose. It was a really, like, the investigators really made the scenario kind of come to life for us on that when we played it. So a lot of love for The Resort by Cat Clay.
Yeah, really can't overemphasize how fun it is to say, here are your pre-gens and they're all scumbags.
Yes,
It's, you know,
100%.
if you know, it's a horror property, right? So these guys are going to get picked off one by one. You know, treat them as such, right? You know, get the cast of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Get, you know, just a thoroughly detestable group of people together and make horrible things happen to them.
Yeah.
I think related to that is you touched on relationships between the different investigators. And I love when scenarios have that predetermined kind of like, this is how you feel about this other investigator, because it makes it really easy when you're doing a one shot to like get up pretty quickly to the role play. You don't have to ease yourself into it. You're like, I don't like this person, and I can role play that pretty quickly. So I like when people do that. And I think Jade Griffin does that really well in her scenarios, is she has those relationships between the investigators. So yeah.
And I think there's an element of giving permission. You know, we all want to be good at the table. We want to be collegial. But at the same time, if you make clear that, well, this is an aspect of the pre-generated character, so obviously I'm going to still need your consent if I'm going to be really mean to you, but know that that's where this is coming from. And we both kind of are in on the joke.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I suppose it makes also keepers very happy when they get to kill off this whole bunch of thoroughly detestable bunch of PCs in the team.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I, you know, this is something to explore, but I wonder if you have players who are stuck in the mindset of, I want to keep my guy alive as long as possible, like maybe give them someone who's an archetypal, you know, the next victim in the slasher movie, and they won't feel as bad about getting them killed. Leslie, keep us rolling.
Okay, so the title of my category is Great Bonus Extra Goodie. And this is basically something that is not essential to the scenario working, but the writer has given me something fun that makes the keeper really excited. So I have put The Dragon of Wantley by S.R. Sellens into this category for a couple of reasons. But number one is because he includes a 3D print file. So I have my thing that I 3D printed, which is a medallion that is associated with the scenario. Which also inspired me to go out into my garden and get a rock to draw a symbol on. So this is obviously, you don't have to 3D print this, but if you have the opportunity to, it brings a little bit more life to your game. And then he also included a audio file of music that was important to the scenario in that. So just these other elements that kind of bring in extra fun for the keeper, I really enjoy.
Do you know the Dragon of Wantley, way back in the day, if Heinrich remembers, was the first scenario that was released on the Miskatonic Playhouse.
So cool.
And it was awesome. We had so much fun with it. I remember the song. Definitely remember the song. I remember the amulet as well. Yeah, and it's a great scenario, and I think, you know, authors like Stu, scenario writers like S.R. Sellens, you know, they do go the extra mile to just kind of go, let's just give them this little tidbit. Oh, and here's another thing, and you know, Newman definitely hasn't recognized all these extra references that probably cropped up and mean something because they're there, and they are wonderful when you find them. And I think to have those gifts like that it's so cool. It's so lovely.
Yeah, and in the vein of scenarios that come with wonderful goodies, I want to shout out Colin Richards' Signal to Noise, which I met him at Chaosium Con a couple years ago when he was laying out the handouts preparing to run this, and I like stopped where I was and went over, and it's got, what is it, 19 handouts and props, and these are good things. You know, this scenario is worth engaging with just for the fun of sorting through the feelies in it. Really encourage that if you have the energy and the ability to make them. You know, they can be physical, they can be he's got videos in there. I think there's more of a move to include audio files with scenarios that can be played at certain times. All really great ideas.
We ran this at MRCon 2 years ago, I think. It was the Shoggoth game
Yeah.
2 years ago, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah, great time. Check it out if you want to see his game. Check it out.
Yeah. And I guess I'll go next briefly. So the title of my collection is Scenarios that Help Situate the Players in a Setting that They Don't Know Very Well, which is very long. I need to have a pithier title. But I first want to, the first one I want to bring up there is Our Curious Masters by Jane Routley, which is Downton Abbey, but horror. And you play, I think everyone, if you tell them, okay, you're a rich person in an estate in the early 1900s, I think they can get it, right? It's easy to be rich and such. But no, you're all playing the downstairs crew. And that is a lot harder. And what this scenario does, which I think is fantastic, is it has you play out a normal day first. So everyone gets their roles, their staff roles. You discuss, what the kind of etiquette rules are, and then you play through. It's breakfast. We're up early, getting ready for the owners of the estate. You might grab a quick bowl of, porridge before you get going. Everyone's dressed up just so. Everyone has to have the clothes. The valet has to have the clothes ready. The lady's maid has to do X, Y, and Z. And you go through this, and as you do, you bump up against the social rules, right? You better not, if you're not above a certain tier in the staff, you may not be seen in the public areas. You have to address each other by your last name, that kind of thing. And it doesn't have to take a whole long time. I think it can play out probably in 20 or 30 minutes. But for players who are not used to all the social strictures of that time and place, it gets you in that headspace so that when everything goes to hell, you understand how big of an impact that is when not to spoil anything, but when one of the major NPCs begins acting not in accordance with what's customary. And it stands out much more than it would.
I think it's also an example of one of the things that many of us love about Call of Cthulhu games specifically that's different from maybe fantasy or sci-fi stories. Not that we don't have those on the repository, but the opportunity to experience a different time and place and a different type of person, and have authors who care about the historical details and share those with the players so that they can experience some of that. So it's, you can call it an educational opportunity, I suppose, but the fact is all of us love to learn. And so to kind of get an insight into what that kind of life would be like and also get to play a fun game is a win-win.
Yeah, totally agreed. So we'll go back in opposite order. Leslie, you want to go with your second one?
Yes. So my second one is I love when people create new mythos entities. And I think we have a lot of that on the repository. One, it's actually a mini campaign. One that does this very well is called Nothing is Lost, All is Transformed. And this takes place in Paris. He created this being. Little bit of spoilers if you would like to mute for a second. So this being is a great old one called Kanath Nog. And this cult wants to gain this great one's power. So the cult does some weird things of ingesting an egg of this great old one, which does terrible things to the human body. And the great old one wants to continue having his presence spread, obviously, through the earth. So done with spoilers. I love how deep that the scenario went into creating this mythos entity. So it gave me as a keeper enough information to understand what the motivations of the cult were, why this was actually important, why these weird artifacts were important to the game, and why it was important that the investigators actually went to get these artifacts. So I really appreciate when writers are willing to take the risk to just create something new and add to the whole mythos lore.
Yeah, that's great. Who else loves new mythos elements and has one in mind? Yeah.
Yeah, I've put together new stuff myself. In fact, that was one of the briefs we had when me, Scott, and Paul did Nameless Horrors, that we put together non-named, or rather non-canonical mythos entities. So I think it's something that more authors should embrace. I mean, don't feel restricted to just using, oh, you've got to use this because Lovecraft used it. But he didn't have a sheet to use from the beginning. So take a page out of his book, make your own weird stuff up.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Newman.
I didn't really give a title for my categories. But that's because I've so cheekily just spread across all categories, I think.
Yeah, you're not the only
first
one. Don't worry.
Yeah, okay,
No, we
good. Just checking, just
conspired to
checking.
do this behind your backs. Sorry, we thought we would show up
Excellent,
looking
that's
more
okay.
prepared.
Well, what I have got is a scenario again that I was lucky enough to run a while ago, and it was a bit of a okay. Let's give it a shot. This is Branches of Bone, which is a Cthulhu Dark Age Viking Age survival horror. This is by MGR, who's got lots of scenarios. He's also the author of the Flash Cthulhu books as well. And do you know what? In here, all my notes are still in there for when I ran it, which I quite like. I've got all my little notes in there. There's so much to talk about with this one. I'd fully recommend getting it just as a almost like a palate cleanser for a group. If you game with the same group quite a lot, it's a really fantastic kind of one shot. But for me, this is about setting. There's so much in there we could talk about, NPCs, mythos, but the actual setting. You are Vikings, each with their own kind of role and whatnot, but you are coming to the islands around northern England, and one of them has a small monastery on it, and it's this island that is your playground. Essentially, it's the monastery that is the place that you go. But I think this idea of getting you into the game, having such an environmental atmosphere, medieval England, or this idea pre-medieval, kind of getting this idea of the Vikings arriving, they're on the island. You spoilers if you're looking to play this rather than run this, but you have to kind of go up the shale, go up the shore. You're on the island. You've got the brisk weather. Everything's kind of against you there. You're trying to get up to the monastery. There's a couple of people that are trying to stop you. You get to the monastery, and then there's people there that can't speak your language because they're speaking English, and you're speaking Norse or Nordic or whatever it is that you're speaking. And it's just wonderful, those moments of confusion. And I think I even phonetically at some point, because I just got carried away, wrote down some like what was a supposedly like phonetic medieval English, so that when the players were being the Vikings, I was speaking to them reading off this phonetic script. But it was because of the environment. It added that isolation aspect to the characters. They'd gone into invade and raid as the aggressors, but then very quickly the environment on the island, it quickly maybe that's my theme. Islands. Yeah, okay, there we go. I knew I had thought about this. It kind of turned on its head, and the aggressors quickly became, or the predators became the prey very quickly. But it was a wonderful environmental piece that I think that was well thought out.
That's great. Yeah, I'm interested in I don't know if anyone has something in mind, but the idea of letting the environment be an obstacle, letting it be part of the elevating. Actually, I have one. Elevating the idea of the setting. I guess this is not Miskatonic Repository. You have to forgive me, but Bridget Jeffries' Aurora Blue, where you're playing federal prohibition agents in Alaska, right? I think Alaska, especially in that time and place, is not a setting that players are familiar with. And it plays with the expectation. So it leans into the expectations at first. And then when the local environment turns out to be much different than you expect, I think subverts what little knowledge you may have of that period of time and place.
Well, I think I can provide a repository example, if I may. And it's an oldie, but it has held up incredibly well. And that is Pipeline, a story where maybe half of it is really just getting to the action, but it's got quite a bit of action in itself, and involving a plane crash and making it through the wilderness, and really challenging. And there's some good playthroughs of it, recordings, but that's a great example of the environment really working against you.
Great. All right. I think we're back to Matt.
Well, I'll take a little bit from a couple of different folks here. I'll continue with my inspired by other media example. But rather than creating a new mythos monster, it takes one that's known, which I will keep very much under wraps. I won't go into spoiler territory here. It's Paul Fricker's Dockside Dogs. Very much inspired by a certain film about maybe canines by Quentin Tarantino. You're going to bark all day, doggy? Yeah, there's scenes like that. It's very much a bunch of gangsters that have just pulled a job which has gone a little sideways, held up in a warehouse, waiting for the boss to turn up to take the loot away from them. And ensue hijinks here. There's some scenes that get thrown in as kind of like hand grenades that you just throw into scenes to rile people up, and then wait for the various different relationships between the pre-gens to kick in, and wait for eventually someone's going to pull a gun on someone else because there's just that tension all the way through it. And yeah, it just does a great job of building on the tropes laid down by that film, but still going in a different way. And for maybe veteran Cthulhu players sitting there thinking, okay, what's the mythos element here? It's very weird, and I've got no idea what the hell's going on. And then finally, after a couple of name drops, you suddenly go, now I know what I'm dealing with, but it still feels very weird. How is this going to interact with what's going on? And yeah, it's just a classic WTF curtain or rug pull from under the players' feet when they finally realize what's going on. But I love it. And it definitely reinforces the piece of advice that you should give to players when they have pre-gens. Don't talk about what's on your character sheet to anyone else.
Yeah.
Here be spoilers. Yeah, don't ruin the fun by saying, kind of blurting out something that then ruins stuff before the game even starts.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. So I actually want to dig into two pieces of that. So I always struggle with managing, player versus player tension. Not like literal or character versus character, I should say. If your players are mad at each other, that's bad. But, sort of allowing the investigators to have conflict or even to fight or attack each other. The Dockside and other dog related media famously have quite a lot of that. So would love either examples that you have to mind of other scenarios where that's a prominent piece, or just general advice in scenarios for setting that up and having it go well. Matt, I think, having those agendas baked into the character sheet secretly is really good because it sets that up, but, would love to hear other thoughts.
Yeah, I think the key thing is, specifically if it's a one shot, let them have it. Give them a full magazines full of ammo and let them go at each other. Just make sure you pace it out so you don't want them to be at each other's throats from scene one. Just let it, like any good recipe or like any good food, let it marinate, let it stew, let it get some flavor, and then let the bullets start flying. Really just drive them like you stole them and ram them into each other, play a bit of Car Wars with them. And yeah, no one's going to survive the end of the scenario anyway. It's not like they're going to go on to a sequel if it's a self-contained one-shot. Have at it. Just make sure that your players are all very much aware that it is just characters going at each other, not players. So maybe have that little bit of seed that ground as a bit of a pep talk, not quite like a session zero, but like a nice pre-game chat. And then as long as everyone's happy, lean into it as much as you can.
We, Leslie and I were lucky enough yesterday to play in Deadbeats for the Shoggoth game. And I don't know how you felt, Leslie, but the characters in that, we each had a very kind of, it wasn't too black and white, like this is how you feel, this is your conflict, or this is how this is why you like them. But it was very much layered with this is your character, these are the other pre-gens, this is how, these are relationships you have with them. And I guess it was there. You could argue a bit of a sliding scale to invest in as much or as little as you wanted. It wasn't like you love this person or you hate this person, but it was you've got quite a good relationship with this person. This is your relationship with them, X, Y, and Z. Which I think, to be fair, Leslie, obviously I hadn't read your character sheet, but mine very much drove me, because our characters ended up spending a fair bit of time together. It drove me to form the relationship with your character that I did. Which was just being slightly nicer than I was to all the other characters. But yeah, I like that. I think that's a fantastic thing. Yeah, when you get given a pre-gen sheet and you've got those pre-built relationships that allow you to, as Heinrich said earlier, with obviously the consent of the players, but allow you to kind of lead into it. it gives you ownership, doesn't it, over your PC, that you've got something to kind of roll with. Yeah.
Yeah, understanding that history that you have with different characters before you get to the table is really helpful, and able to fall into a rhythm, I think, a little bit faster, because I think sometimes like it does take a warm-up time at tables for people to get where they're at with each other's relationships, and so that warm-up time is just shortened when you have some of that.
I really like the idea of ownership as well, because in a sense, the players are going to own the larger story, sure, but that includes elements that are in many ways out of their control, which is part of the fun. But when you are dealing with these interpersonal conflicts between characters, it is an opportunity for players at the table to sort of craft their own mini narrative, and have that relationship and have ownership over that relationship. I mean, to the point raised earlier of sort of not sharing what's on your pre-gen character sheet, I think that's a great way of proceeding. I think there's different approaches, and some folks call this sort of an open table or closed table, whether you are kind of speaking out of character and sharing details. And I think both approaches are perfectly valid, and there's great examples of both of them. But it probably is for folks listening and writing their scenarios a good reminder of how important it is that a scenario make clear kind of what the expectation is, and if there's an expectation of play attention and how that should be resolved. Because at its worst, player versus player dynamics, right, can lead to aggravation, but at its best, it really turns the players into storytellers in their own right, and a joy to see.
That's really, really well said. Thank you. I love it. And Heinrich, I think so. I had one other thing, but I think we can save that because that may come up in some of the other selections. But Matt mentioned the sort of really excellent twist in this scenario, which we will not spoil. And if you all think of other ones that have a really, walloping twist one way or the other, don't spoil it. But if you can think of it and sort of talk about it in a safe way, we can do that, as we go. You don't have to think of it right now. But Heinrich, I'll go back to you for your other, for one of your other ones that you thought about ahead of time.
Well, I am categoryless, but I did. My methodology was to look at the repository bundle this year and see what stood out to me. If I had to categorize why this one stood out to me, it's because I am fascinated by approaching scenarios by way of what is the problem you're trying to solve. At a very basic level, when we write a scenario, the problem we're trying to solve is we want folks to have a good time, right? We have players who are not playing an RPG. We want them playing an RPG. Here you go. But we can dig a bit deeper. And this was previewed by another panelist, but the Flash Cthulhu series by MJR, Michael and C. Reed, is a great example of this, because these are scenarios that I have one open here, Alone on Oban, which is 8 pages. That's the PDF. And one of those pages is the cover. Another page is the credits. And then looks like 2 pages are pre-gen NPCs, pre-gen player characters. So that leaves you about 4 pages of text to run a 1-hour Call of Cthulhu scenario. And the number of times that I am in a position where I have some friends and we may not have the luxury of 4 to 8 hours, but really just we want to have this in and out 1-hour experience. We want to enjoy some Call of Cthulhu. This scenario in particular, but I think it's true for all of the Flash Cthulhu scenarios, is a great solution to that problem, because it gives you something that, as the keeper, I mean, if I speed read it, right, I'm through this in minutes. But if you give me half an hour, an hour, I'm certainly well prepared. And then it just takes an hour to play through. And I think it would be challenging for any of us to look at scenarios we may have written and gone, oh yeah, you can bring it that quickly to the table and have so solid an experience. So I think that's a great example of what's fantastic about the repository is the problems that the authors on the repository are trying to solve are not always the problems that major publishers are in a position to solve themselves, because there may not be the market for it. And so, these short one-shot scenarios where I mean, listen, the Flash Cthulhu scenarios, they're about $1 each. Right? If you take away nothing else, give it a try. See all that dollar gets you, or 67 cents or whatever it is on the bundle. Right? That's not something a major publisher can often do. Other problems that some scenarios may try and solve, and this gets into some of scenarios other folks here are familiar with, are the Gatsby and the Great Race. A solution to the problem of we have a whole lot of players. How are we going to have a scenario that can accommodate that? And again, it's a market that a major publisher may not have enough incentive to fill because it's just not happening that often, right? How often are we going to have 20 players at a table? But the repository has the luxury of presenting a solution to just that problem. And Flash Cthulhu is a perfect example of this.
Excellent. Yeah. And I want to just quickly shout out a line of similar scenarios in that they're very, very low prep. You pick up and go. And those are Alan Carey's Seeds of Terror, which came out, I think, a couple of years ago. And you pick it up and you leaf through it and you're ready to go. I don't know that they're all optimized for an hour, but they are, people have reported back that they have successfully spent 10 minutes prepping them and then they're off and running. It does, I think, require a little more fill in by the keeper, for the details. But if you're comfortable doing that, really, really good approach to it. All right. So I'm going to jump in and do my other one that I was thinking of, again, in the acclimating people to their setting. I want to shout out Friends of Dorothy by Mav Henze. Phenomenal scenario. Set in the 80s. All the investigators are members of the LGBTQ plus community. And there are questions, first of all, which is a tactic that Mav uses a lot, which I love, which is, sort of emotional questions. What was something that happened in your life that's relevant to this scenario? How did you get to be here? Who betrayed you? Who helped you? And in thinking of the answer to that as a player, you become more aligned with the mindset of the character. And then similar to our Curious Masters, it starts not with a crisis immediately, but with a little bit of time in a club of that time where the characters can be themselves, briefly free of, the kind of fear that was pervasive in the community in the 80s. And you spend a little bit of time, learning what the best, happiest version of that community looks like before everything goes to hell. And I also want to shout out this one as an example of a massive twist, but in a weird way. The plot is relatively straightforward as kind of like almost a fantasy adventure, but about 70 or 80% of the way through, it clicks what the scenario is really about emotionally. I don't want to say more than that, but I will say that is when many players get a little dusty and have to take a moment to collect themselves, when you kind of realize what you've really been playing through as you're experiencing the scenario. All right, I'll go back to Leslie.
One quick thing before I get to my next one. I think something that's really cool about Call of Cthulhu, but particularly the Miskatonic Repository, is there's a lot of, I think, education moments, disguised education, because we play the game not going in being like, I want to learn about this thing and educate me, please. But it's like a natural consequence of the games that we play. And so I think having that variety of hitting on some of those harder to talk about topics and not so great times in history, I think is just a really cool thing that we get to experience and explore on the repository. Okay, so for my next category, I actually wanted to talk about cover art because there is some incredible cover art on the repository. And I guess this kind of goes along with formatting in general, but my pick for this is Carnival of Madness. So Alex Galat, who is like top tier echelon in terms of our formatting world, he did the cover for this, and it was just very well executed in terms of I knew what I was getting into when I picked up the scenario. It did a great job of hooking me, grabbing my interest, and it helps to get me into the setting before I even like start reading the scenario. So the other thing I'll do is there is a analysis someone did about, it was specifically the DM's Guild, but of covers that work well. And this can be applied to the Miskatonic Repository as well. So there's some awesome stats. If you're a little bit nerdy and like statistics, you can take a look at those and learn about cover art.
Fantastic.
Evan,
Thank you. Yeah.
Apologies. I just I had a thought on your earlier question about those kind of reveals, those kind of
Yeah,
moments.
please.
Just to mix it up a bit, as an author, I'd like to introduce. His name's Alex Guillot, and he wrote the Tartarus Intercept, which I know we've had a go at as well. And again, spoilers. So if you're looking to play in the Tartarus Intercept, you're going to need to mute or go for a walk or go and borrow the neighbor's dog and come back in a bit after you've had a walk, and then you can come back.
And give the dog back. Definitely give the dog back.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry. Yeah, absolutely. Or just help them with the missing posters. Heinrich, when we did that game, Heinrich is amazing because I kind of had, again, without no sharing between the players, but Alex kind of talked to me about what was going on in it. And Heinrich, I think you were an editor on it. Am I right, Heinrich, in thinking that that's the case?
I did. Now, that said, Alex doesn't require much help in that department. But yes, I think I did contribute a little bit. But I got to play in the game you're mentioning and had a fantastic time.
And obviously muting if you don't want spoilers, but the wonderful moment was that one of the characters can be, depending on how you play it, you can have them as a traitor that brings a betrayal because they are part of the mythos. And we went into it, nobody knew anything apart from Heinrich, who had edited it, so he was the surefire choice to be the person. I said, could you play this character who's going to be a traitor? And I think for what we did, and we did it on the Miskatonic Repository Shoggoth game again, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, I don't even know when now, but that worked out beautifully because I, as the keeper, it was great fun because I got to interact with one of my players sneakily about the scenario, and then we kind of played dumb to everybody else. So lovely, beautiful kind of moment of reveal.
And sorry to go back to one of the earlier points we talked about. What problem are you trying to solve? Boy, what happens if you want to run the scenario and one of the players is familiar with it? Well, if there's a trader mechanic, that scenario has solved that problem for you.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, here, you know what's coming. You help me out. You help make this happen. Yeah. So I'm going to move ahead to Matt just because we're running a little short on time. Sorry. But
well, that's fine because it's actually Evan. You stole my thunder for that on my third example because I was going to bring up signal to noise.
Well, yeah, maybe you had a different thing that you liked about it. That's fine.
No, my main thing was I was going to bring up that it evoked a lot of the atmosphere that you had from the first season of Channel Zero, the Candle Cove series. It's all about a pirate TV station or signal that's invaded another regular broadcast. And the thing that really got me in there is the visual handouts. I mean, the video clips that they made, that Colin made for that, are just phenomenal. And they're just a complete level of immersion, realism, and just something else that you don't get in other older printed mainstream release products. So it was just something completely brand new and unique for me. And and on top of that, again, you've got an original monster. Feels very kind of King in Yellow weirdness, but it's very much its own thing. So yeah, if you like the weirder end of the scale, then Signal to Noise is definitely one for you.
Excellent. And Heinrich, I think we got one more.
Yeah, so I'll talk about a couple of scenarios that are in the repository bundle, both of them by Skrosny. And these are one-on-one scenarios. So these are scenarios that feature one keeper and one player. Again, sort of a very interesting dynamic, I think, that only a few times do you see major publishers tackling it, but you have a lot more examples on the repository. So specifically, I'm thinking here of Storm Witch's Revelations, which is a pulp Cthulhu scenario set in the Middle Ages, around 1400, as well as I, Nyarlathotep, which is another one-on-one scenario. And what I think, again, it's great because it helps explore another dynamic. You see sort of waves of products on the repository as different genres become popular. So for a while, all the rage was solo scenarios, right? Like, it's just me and a book, and I'm going to have a great time. I'm going to have a Call of Cthulhu experience. And now we're seeing these scenarios that are really like one keeper and one player. And I don't know if others have had the chance to play games like this, but I find that it creates such an intimate relationship, and really quite potentially a frightening one, appropriate for a horror genre, because the spotlight is always on the player, right? There's nowhere else to hide. It's all you. You're doing all the action, and it depends on the scenario, but that can be just wonderful at evoking a certain kind of mood.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I have been playtesting a short campaign one-on-one with Mav, and I think one of the things that I love about it is when you have one player and one keeper, you can really start adapting the scenarios on the fly to the things that one investigator is interested in. So when you have, 4+ people at the table, you have to keep things open. You have to say, what are the various different ways they might approach this? And I have to be ready for that. With one person, you get used to their style, and you're like, I know what they're going to zoom in on. I know what's going to capture their interest, and I can sort of throw away the cruff that was there to catch other people and just focus in for this one person, which is really cool. Let's see. I also, I guess in that regard, right? COVID made everybody want to figure out how to play with the one other person who lives in their house or by themselves. And I want to shout out among many or a few other really, really beautifully done and successful solo books. Heinrich, your Carcosa guide remains a thing of beauty and a monumental achievement to me.
Well, thank you. I had the pleasure of running it just yesterday, day before. Time is meaningless. And, I hadn't looked at it in a while. And so it was refreshing to go through it and go, oh, right, this is quite fucked up. Delightful, yeah. But another great example, very popular, and highly recommend, is Alone Against Nyarlathotep on the repository. So that's another great experience, and also in that solo scenario, solo adventure. It's more of a campaign, of course, but highly recommend that. Not one of the newer products at this point, but probably one of the most successful ones.
Yeah. Excellent. All right, so we've got 2 minutes. Heinrich, if you could, and then everyone else, just again briefly say who you are and where people can find you if you wish to be found.
Yes, please find me, contact me over Facebook, over Discord. Just shout my name 3 times and I shall appear. No, I've been Heinrich Moore. It's been an absolute pleasure. In terms of what I have coming up, I actually have little coming up that I am writing myself. However, myself, in coordination with Evan, are working on something called The Year of the Goat. And this is going to be a scenario anthology celebrating, in appropriately horrific fashion, the great old one, Shub-Niggurath, an eldritch entity that I think has not seen enough attention on the repository and in the genre generally. And so these are going to be 12 scenarios that feature variations on this great old one. And I think folks will be delighted to see all the different interpretations that one can have of this being. And we have veteran authors, we have first-time authors. Just this morning, I ran one scenario called Insurti Diaboli, which is written by Jason Green, and was fantastic, was like a Finnish metal band, lost in the woods, and was just a rock and roll time. And it's a good example of the diversity of the scenarios, where we'll have everything from Dark Ages to classic to contemporary. And I encourage everyone to check it out when it comes out in the new year.
Excellent. Matt, where can people find you?
I can also be found on the Ye Great Book of Faces as well. It's about the only real social media platform besides Discord that I end up using, even though I mainly use it to look at cute videos of birds, because we keep various birds and parrots here. Otherwise, over at blasphemoustomes.com is the website for the Good Friends of Jackson Elias podcast. And I'm usually fairly active over on the Into the Darkness Discord channel as well.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Newman.
Hello, I've been TA Newman, and you can find me at the Miskatonic Repository Con Discord. You can find me at the Miskatonic Playhouse Discord. We have our YouTube channel. You can find our podcasts on all the places that you would normally find podcasts, and then probably a few tapes lying around the floor in some libraries and things. But yeah, on all the socials is TA Newman, but I will also answer to all of the Miskatonic Playhouse out there. So get in touch.
Lovely. And Leslie, take us out.
All right. You can find me on my YouTube channel under XP Lovecat, and I also help with editing for role-playing games and fiction books. I love helping people with their beautiful messes. So if you would like to chat to me about your project, then I would love to hear from you.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. Enjoy the rest of this final day of the con. I hope you take good memories with you forward, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.